People are going to look at the bark and assume I spent $100 on this brisket. They're going to assume it's prime grade. They're going to assume it came from a specialty butcher shop. They're going to assume it took some competition level technique to get a bark like that. This brisket cost me $62, choice grade from Walmart. The reason that bark is almost black has nothing to do with how much I spent on the beef. It has everything to do with three things: the rub, the wood, and knowing what you're actually doing when you put it in the smoker. That's what this video is all about. Today, we're smoking a full packer brisket in the Masterbuilt electric smoker for cheap. Choice grade beef, a rub you can mix in 5 minutes, and a method that gets you results that had nothing to do with how much you spent. But first, before we get into it, what's the most you've ever spent on a single brisket? Drop it in the comments. I've heard some wild numbers from people. Someone said they dropped $160 on a Wagyu brisket, and that was their first smoke. Drop your number below. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. I drop backyard barbecue videos every single week. Let's get into it. Let me tell you something the premium beef industry doesn't really want you to think too hard about. The difference between a select brisket and a choice brisket is marbling. The difference between a choice brisket and a prime brisket is the amount of marbling. And marbling matters. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. More fat means more moisture during a long cook. But here's what nobody talks about: the technique gap between a good cook and a bad cook. It's 10 times wider than the quality gap between a choice and a prime beef brisket. I've eaten prime briskets that were dry and disappointing because someone pulled them too early or didn't let them rest long enough. I've eaten choice briskets that were absolutely stunning because the cook was dialed in from the start. What you're paying for when you go from choice to prime is a margin of error. Prime beef is more forgiving because the extra fat protects you from small mistakes. But if you know what you're doing, and after this video, you will, choice beef gets you 90% of the way and for half the price. $30 to $60 at Walmart or your local grocery store. Let's talk about how to make the most of it. When it comes to picking your brisket, here's what to look for. Full packer brisket. That means the flat and the point are still connected and it's one whole piece. You want the full packer because the point, that's the fatty end. And that fat from the point renders down, essentially basting the meat as it cooks. If you buy just a flat, you lose that protection and have to fight to keep it moist the whole time. At Walmart and most grocery stores, a full packer will run you somewhere between $3 and $4 a pound for choice. A 10 to 12 pound brisket puts you right at $40 to $60. But that's basically what beef costs these days. When you're standing in front of the meat case, you're looking for three things and three things only, not 20. One is flexibility. Pick the brisket up and try to bend it. A flexible brisket has good fat distribution and will cook more evenly than a stiff one. Yes, while the brisket is cold, it will be stiff, but it should still bend a little. If the brisket is stiff and there is no bend whatsoever, it usually indicates less marbling and a tougher flat. The second thing that you're looking for is fat cap thickness. You want about a ½ inch of fat on the top side before you even trim it. Too thin, there's nothing to render down and protect the meat. Too thick, and it'll never fully render through. Now the third thing is even thickness on the flat. If the flat tapers off dramatically at one end, the thin end will cook much faster than the thick end. And you end up with one end that's perfect and one end that's overdone. Look for a flat that stays relatively consistent in thickness from end to end. One more thing I'm buying. Check your store's app or weekly ad before you go. Brisket goes on sale more than most people realize, especially around the holidays, around the summer, grilling season, and just sometimes randomly. I've picked up choice full packers for $2.50 a pound by just checking the app before I went to the store. On a 12-pound brisket, that's a $10 difference. If you're on a budget, that matters. Sign up for your grocery store's reward program. If you haven't, most of them send targeted emails based on what you've bought before. Once you buy a brisket, they'll send you brisket deals. It's really not that complicated. It takes just a minute to set up and you're good to go. Next, we move on to trimming. And for a budget cook, this matters even more than usual because you're not working with the extra fat of prime beef as a safety net. A clean trim gives you more control over the cook. Fat side up first. I'm taking the fat cap down to about 1/4 inch, not bald, 1/4 inch. That fat is going to render during the cook and protect the flat. A ½ inch slab of fat isn't going to render through in a 14-hour cook. 1/4 inch will. Then you flip it over and any hard fat chunks on the bottom, take them off. Silver skin, take it off. And then any thin pieces that hang off the edges, they should be taken off too. Those just burn and turn bitter. And the mindset here is simple. You want every surface to be consistent so that the smoke and the heat flow evenly. No thick patches, no thin patches, no flaps, smooth and uniform all the way around. Total trim time should be about 10 minutes. Don't overthink it. You're not competing for a trophy. You're feeding people. That's the goal. All right, here's the rub I use when I want big pepper flavor and a clean, savory profile that works on just about anything. This blend is built around black pepper. It's bold, simple, and designed to create a great bark without getting in the way of the meat. So what's in it? Coarse black pepper. This is the backbone. Big pepper flakes give you that crunchy pepper forward bark. Kosher salt. This is your base seasoning. Brings everything together. Granulated garlic, which adds a savory depth. Onion powder, which rounds out the flavor and gives that rub a little bit more body. And mustard powder. This is going to add that subtle tang that balances the heavy pepper. This blend hits hard in all the right ways. Strong pepper bite, clean savory notes, a little tang for a balance, and a bark that forms beautifully on the smoker. It's simple, reliable, and it works on chicken, pork, beef, anything that loves pepper and smoke. Today I'm using yellow mustard as a binder for this cook. I brush it on evenly on the top, the bottom, the sides. And don't worry about the mustard flavor. It cooks off completely over 14 hours. You will not taste it. It's just doing one job, giving the rub something to grip so it doesn't fall off when you're handling the brisket. Now here's something that most people don't realize about binders. A binder is just moisture on the surface of the meat. That's it. Mustard works, olive oil works, hot sauce works, water technically works. You could also use Worcestershire sauce here. Anything that creates a tacky surface for the rub to stick is doing the job. Try this rub on your next cook, but let it sit in for at least an hour after applying. If you could do it the night before and let it rest in the fridge overnight, that's even better. This rub is going to penetrate the surface and you're going to get more flavor all the way through. Now, this rub is one of 50 in my Backyard Barbecue Flavor System cookbook. Each one has the full blend, the wood pairing, the meats it works best on, and the reasoning behind every ingredient. Drop the word flavor system in the comments and I'll send it your way. Okay, so the Masterbuilt electric smoker is set to 250 degrees and I'm using the Meter Plus Bluetooth wireless probe. I inserted it into the thickest part of the flat before the brisket goes in. This meat probe tracks both the internal meat temperature and the ambient temperature of the smoker. And it does that simultaneously. I have a link for it in the description. You want to know what's actually happening inside the smoker without opening the door. And that probe is how you do it. Wood for this cook is oak and cherry. It pairs with the rub perfectly. During the cook, I'll reload on wood chips every 45 minutes for the first 5 hours. After 5 hours, I stop. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. The meat hits its smoke saturation point around the 4 or 5 hour mark. More chips after that add bitterness, not flavor. Stop at the 5 hours and let the cook finish on its own. The brisket goes in fat side down, because the heating element in the Masterbuilt electric smoker is at the bottom. Fat side down puts the fat cap between the heating element and your meat. This setup is specific to the Masterbuilt electric smoker. So close the door. Let's talk about what's going to happen over the next 14 hours. For the first 5 hours, we're building the bark and laying down the smoke. Reloading chips every 30 to 45 minutes. The door stays closed between the reloads. And the Meter Plus app tells you everything you need to know, so you're not cracking open the door to check on things. Now around hour 2, you'll start to see the color developing if you do open the door for a chip reload. The stall starts somewhere around hour 5 or 6. The internal temperature is going to stop climbing and you'll be sitting at 160, maybe 165 degrees. And it could be for 30 minutes. It could be for 2 hours. And like I said, this is called the stall, and it is completely normal. What's happening is that the moisture is evaporating from the brisket's surface, and it is cooling the meat at the same rate the smoker is heating the meat. Your brisket is essentially sweating itself cool. It'll push through eventually on its own, but we're gonna help it. So we add some heavy duty aluminum foil, 2 sheets of it, overlapped, and then we're gonna wrap the brisket tight so that every bit of moisture and heat gets trapped in there, right against the meat. The foil is going to push this brisket through the stall faster than butcher paper would, and in a Masterbuilt electric smoker where you don't have a raging fire driving the heat, that matters. So we wrap it and we get it back in the smoker or an oven at 250 degrees. And now we wait for probe tender. After the wrap, things start moving again. The temperature climbs. The Meter Plus app will give you an estimated finish time, but take it as a rough guide, not a guarantee. Briskets really do whatever they want. Now, starting around 195 degrees internally, I'm checking for probe tenderness. Push the probe into the thickest part of the flat and feel for resistance. What you want is the probe sliding in like it's a hot knife going through some butter. Almost no pushback whatsoever. When you feel that, pull the brisket out. Don't pull at a specific temperature, but pull on feel, because some briskets are done at 200. Some need 206. The number gets you close, but the probe feel tells you when it's actually ready. Now, once we hit probe tender, we're ready for the rest. What you're gonna do is pull the brisket from the smoker when it's probe tender. Still wrapped in foil, then wrap it in a beach towel, put it in a cooler, close the lid, and leave it for an hour minimum. 2 is better, and I usually go for a minimum of 3 to 4 hours on a full packer this size. During this rest, the muscle fibers are going to relax and reabsorb all the moisture that contracted toward the center during the cook. Cut into it before the rest, and all the moisture pours out onto your cutting board. Give it a rest, and it stays in the meat where it belongs. So this is pretty easy. All you have to do is set a timer, walk away. This part is not optional. Just do it. All right, let's see what a $62 brisket, a $300 smoker in 14 hours gets you. And look at that bark. It's almost black. It's glossy. People are going to look at this and tell you it's burnt. It's not burnt. This is a bark so dark, it's so crunchy, it barely looks real. Look at how that flat is holding the moisture. That's the fat side down orientation doing its job. The fat cap protected the flat the entire cook. The point, this is where the budget brisket argument completely ends. Because it's juicy, it has great bark, the fat has been rendered over the course of that 14 hours. It has a beautiful smoke flavor from that hickory and cherry, and it somehow makes the whole thing taste more expensive than it is. The flat is tender, juicy, not as rich as the point obviously, but way more moisture than you'd expect from a choice grade beef brisket. If you just handed it to someone without telling them what grade it was, they wouldn't know it. And that point is just absurd. The fat has rendered completely, it's buttery, it's rich. This thing cost me $62, and I'll say it again, $62. And if you're watching this and you want this rub recipe plus 49 other rubs with wood pairings and meat recommendations and all in one place, that's my backyard barbecue flavor system. Drop the word flavor system down in the comments below and I'll send you the link. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, do that now. I'm dropping new backyard barbecue guides every single week. Here's what I actually want you to take away from this. The barbecue world has a way of making you feel like you need to spend more money to get better results. Better beef, better equipment, better wood. And some of that is real. I'm not going to pretend that prime beef and a big offset don't produce incredible brisket. They 100% do. But most backyard cooks aren't held back by their beef quality or their equipment. They're held back by the gaps in their technique, the thermometer they're trusting, the door they keep on opening, the rub they never tried, the resting period that they cut short because people were waiting. And all you have to do is fix the technique, and a $62 choice brisket from Walmart will feed a table of people who have no idea it didn't come from a specialty butcher. That's not a compromise. That's just knowing what you're doing. Now that you know how to get competition quality brisket results on a budget, you might want to do a cook this week that doesn't require waking up at 5 a.m. and planning your whole day around the smoker. Smoking a chicken in a Masterbuilt electric smoker is just that. Same temperature, same wood principles, same rub knowledge, and you're eating in a couple of hours instead of 14. And that video is right here. So go ahead and watch it next, because you aren't going to want to miss the step-by-step process that I'd use in order to make a juicy tender chicken in the Masterbuilt electric smoker. I'll see you there, and have a good one.